When you're down to your last $100, every decision feels like it could be your last mistake. Stuart Landry stood in that warehouse with his son Kevin waiting outside in their truck, watching other bidders walk away from a water-damaged storage unit. Everyone else saw junk. Stuart saw one last chance. He spent his last $110 on Unit 47. Inside were 3 bundles wrapped in plastic, hidden in the back corner. What he unwrapped that afternoon was worth millions. Prototype drones from a tech company that went bankrupt years ago. Within a week, his phone wouldn't stop ringing. Tech companies wanted what he'd found. But how did a father living in his truck turn garbage into gold? Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. And subscribe, because tomorrow we have something special waiting for you. The morning sun hadn't yet broken through the grey November sky when Stuart Landry woke in the back of his Ford F-150. His neck ached from the awkward angle against the wadded-up jacket he used as a pillow. Kevin was already awake in the passenger seat, scrolling through his phone, trying to catch the weak Wi-Fi signal from the grocery store across the parking lot. "Morning," Stuart said, his voice rough with sleep. Kevin glanced back. "Morning, Dad. Same breakfast?" Same breakfast. They'd been living in this truck for 8 months now. 8 months of rotating between parking lots, the grocery store on Mondays and Thursdays, the 24-hour fitness center on Tuesdays and Fridays, the library on Wednesdays, and the truck stop on weekends. It was a routine born of necessity, designed to avoid attracting attention from security guards or police officers who might tell them to move along. Stuart pulled on his worn work boots and climbed out of the truck bed where he'd fashioned a makeshift sleeping area with cardboard and old blankets. The November air bit at his face. Winter was coming, and that thought kept him awake most nights. The truck's heater worked, but running it all night burned through gas they couldn't afford. Kevin handed him a granola bar through the window. Breakfast. They'd eat a real meal later at Francine's diner if Stuart could pick up a day labor job. Francine always found a way to give them extra food, claiming the kitchen had made too much or a customer had changed their order. Stuart knew better, but his pride had learned to bend under the weight of hunger. "Any jobs posted?" Stuart asked, wiping the sleep from his eyes. 3 listings. Landscaping moving company needs helpers, and construction cleanup. The construction one pays best, $15 an hour, cash. I'll take that one. You try for the moving company. Kevin nodded. At 23, he should have been finishing college, building a career, living his own life. Instead, he was here, living in a truck with his father, taking whatever odd jobs came their way. The guilt of that reality sat in Stuart's chest like a stone. Stuart Landry had once been someone different. A construction foreman with a crew of 12, a house in a decent neighborhood, a wife he loved, and a future that looked solid. He'd served 6 years in the Navy as an engineer, learned discipline and problem-solving, and brought those skills into civilian life. For 15 years after his service, everything had worked. Not perfect, but good enough. Then his wife Sarah got sick. Cancer. The kind that spreads fast and costs everything to fight. They'd had insurance, but the treatments she needed weren't covered. Experimental therapies, specialist consultations, medications that insurance deemed not medically necessary. Stuart had paid for it all. Mortgaged the house, maxed out credit cards, borrowed from family. She died anyway 6 years ago, leaving him with Kevin and a mountain of debt that swallowed his life whole. He'd kept working, kept fighting, kept the house for 3 more years. But the medical bills never stopped coming. Collection agencies, lawyers, interest compounding on debt he could never hope to repay. Then came the accident at work. A scaffold collapse that shattered his left leg in 3 places. He'd healed mostly, but the limp remained, and with it, the inability to stand on construction sites for 12-hour shifts. His boss had been sympathetic but firm. No light-duty positions available. Unemployment ran out. Savings evaporated. The house went into foreclosure. Stuart had tried to hide the severity from Kevin, who was attending community college on a partial scholarship. But Kevin figured it out when the eviction notice came. Instead of staying with friends or finding his own place, Kevin had packed his things and climbed into his father's truck. "We stick together," Kevin had said. That's what Mom would want. Stuart hadn't had the strength to argue. Now they lived in parking lots, showered at truck stops, or the gym where Stuart maintained a $10 a month membership solely for that purpose and worked whatever jobs they could find. Stuart's engineering knowledge, his years of experience, his Navy service, none of it mattered when you didn't have an address for job applications or clean clothes for interviews. The library was their refuge. Free Wi-Fi, warmth, bathrooms, and a place to sit that didn't draw suspicious looks. Stuart spent hours there, applying for jobs online, studying engineering manuals, keeping his mind sharp. Kevin studied too, hoping to return to school someday, finishing the degree he'd abandoned to stay with his father. "Dad," Kevin said, breaking Stuart's thoughts. "There's something else." Stuart looked up from lacing his boots. Kevin held up his phone. "I saw a flyer posted on the community board online. Storage unit auction. Today at 2. Stuart's stomach tightened. "We don't have money for auctions, Kev." "I know, but—" Kevin hesitated. "Unit 47 is listed. That's your old unit number, isn't it?" The number hit Stuart like a physical blow. Unit 47. He'd rented that storage unit 7 years ago when his wife's brother died suddenly. Uncle Raymond had been a tech engineer, brilliant but secretive about his work. When he passed, his belongings had gone to Stuart's wife, and after she died, Stuart had kept them in storage, meaning to sort through everything when life calmed down. Life never calmed down. The storage fees eventually became impossible to pay. Stuart had defaulted 8 months ago, the same time he'd lost the house. He'd assumed the facility had auctioned the unit already or disposed of the contents. "I thought that was gone," Stuart said quietly. "The auction's at Bridget's facility, the one on Industrial Boulevard." Bridget. Stuart knew her. She managed the storage complex where he'd rented. She'd been patient with late payments, had given him extensions when she shouldn't have. But even her kindness had limits. 8 months of unpaid rent meant she had no choice but to auction the unit. "We can't afford to bid on it," Stuart said. "Even if we wanted to." "I know. I just thought maybe we could go watch. See what happens to it?" Stuart understood what Kevin wasn't saying. The storage unit held the last physical remnants of their old life. Photos, documents, Kevin's childhood belongings, items that had belonged to Stuart's wife. Watching strangers buy it would hurt, but maybe there would be closure in seeing that chapter finally end. "Yeah," Stuart said. "We can go watch." They spent the morning working. Stuart got the construction cleanup job, hauling debris, sweeping floors, loading dumpsters. His leg ached by noon, but he pushed through, earning $75 cash. Kevin made $60 helping a family move furniture. Combined with the $38 they had left from last week, it gave them $163 total. Enough for gas, food for several days, and maybe one night in a cheap motel where they could shower properly and sleep in real beds. At 1:30, they drove to Francine's diner. The lunch rush had ended, and Francine was wiping down tables when they walked in. "My favorite customers," she said, smiling. Francine was in her 60s, grey hair pulled back in a practical bun, wearing the same pink uniform she'd worn for 30 years. "Lunch special today is meatloaf. You boys hungry?" "Just coffee, Francine," Stuart said. "We ate already." She gave him a look that said she knew he was lying. "Coffee's on the house, but I made way too much meatloaf, and it'll just go to waste. Health department won't let me serve it tomorrow. You'd be doing me a favor." Stuart's pride wanted to refuse, but his stomach won. "If you're sure. Positive." She brought them heaping plates of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. "Real food, hot and plentiful?" Stuart ate slowly, savoring every bite, watching Kevin do the same. "You boys doing okay?" Francine asked, sitting down across from them. "Getting by," Stuart said. "I heard the Henderson farm needs help with winter prep. Good pay, couple weeks of work. I'll look into it." "Thanks, Francine." She patted his hand. "You're good people, Stuart. Things'll turn around." He wanted to believe her. Some days it was easier than others. At 1:50, they pulled into the storage facility parking lot. A dozen vehicles were already there, professional auction hunters with cargo vans, curious locals looking for bargains, and a few people like Stuart, who just wanted to see what happened to their abandoned belongings. Stuart's hands tightened on the steering wheel as they sat in the truck, watching people gather near the auction area. This was it, the last piece of his old life, about to be sold to strangers. "You ready?" Kevin asked. Stuart nodded, though he wasn't sure he'd ever be ready for this. They climbed out of the truck and walked toward the crowd, just two more faces in the audience, anonymous and broke, about to watch their past disappear into someone else's future. The auctioneer's voice carried across the parking lot, amplified by a portable speaker system that crackled with static. Stuart and Kevin stood at the back of the crowd, partially hidden behind a cargo van. Stuart didn't want to be recognized, didn't want Bridget to see him and feel worse about what she had to do. Unit 43 went first. The auctioneer cut the lock and rolled up the door, revealing furniture, boxes, and what looked like restaurant equipment. Bidding started at $50 and quickly escalated. A man in a company polo shirt won at $320. Unit 44 was mostly clothes and household goods. It sold for $150. Unit 45 contained tools and sporting equipment. The crowd grew more animated, bidding aggressively. Final price, $475. Unit 46 held electronics and what appeared to be a small business's inventory. 6 people competed for it. The winner paid $890, grinning as he signed the paperwork. Then came Unit 47. Stuart's heart hammered in his chest as the auctioneer approached the familiar orange door. Bridget stood nearby with her clipboard, her expression professionally neutral, but Stuart saw her glance toward the crowd as if searching for someone. The lock was cut. The door rolled up with a metallic screech. The crowd leaned forward, then collectively stepped back. Water damage, obvious and extensive. The concrete floor was stained dark with moisture. Cardboard boxes had collapsed into soggy masses, their contents spilled and ruined. The smell of mildew wafted out, and several bidders wrinkled their noses in disgust. "Well, folks," the auctioneer said, his enthusiasm dimming, "we've got some water damage here. Looks like a roof leak got to this one. Let's see what we have." He stepped inside, moving boxes aside with his boot. Stuart watched, each ruined item a small wound. Photo albums destroyed. Kevin's childhood toys, waterlogged cardboard boxes collapsed around them. Dishes wrapped in newspaper. The paper had disintegrated into pulp. "Not much salvageable here," someone in the crowd muttered. "Waste of time," another agreed. But then the auctioneer moved deeper into the unit, and Stuart saw them. 3 objects in the back corner, wrapped in heavy-duty plastic sheeting, sitting on a wooden pallet that had kept them elevated above the water damage. The plastic was intact, sealed tight, completely dry. "Now what do we have here?" the auctioneer said, examining the bundles without unwrapping them. 3 items, well protected. Could be something, could be nothing. As is, folks. You know the rules. The crowd murmured uncertainly. The 3 bundles were oddly shaped, roughly rectangular, but with irregular contours, each about 2 feet long. They could contain anything, or nothing of value. "Let's start the bidding at $25, the auctioneer announced. No hands went up. "Come on, folks. 3 mystery items, properly stored. Someone take a chance." $20? A woman in the front raised her hand tentatively. $20, thank you. "Do I hear 25? An antique dealer Stuart recognized from previous auctions. A man named Leo, who ran a pawn shop downtown, raised his hand. 25. Stuart's mind raced. $163 in his pocket. Enough to survive another week, maybe 2, if they were careful. Enough for gas and food, and that one night in a motel Kevin had been hoping for. But those 3 bundles, they had survived when everything else had been destroyed. They'd been placed on a pallet, wrapped carefully, protected intentionally. Uncle Raymond had been meticulous about his work. If he'd gone to that much trouble to preserve something, maybe it mattered. 30, the woman bid. 35, Leo counted. Stuart's hand moved before his brain could stop it. 50. Kevin's head whipped toward him, eyes wide. The crowd turned to look at the speaker. The auctioneer brightened. $50 from the gentleman in the back. Do I hear 55? Leo studied Stuart for a moment, then looked back at the unit. 60. Stuart's heart pounded. $60 was too much. They needed that money. This was insane. But something in his gut, The same instinct that had kept him alive in the Navy, that had helped him solve engineering problems others couldn't, told him this mattered. 75, Stuart said, his voice steadier than he felt. Kevin gripped his arm. Dad, what are you doing? Trust me, Stuart whispered, though he wasn't sure he trusted himself. Leo hesitated, calculating. He glanced at the water-damaged unit again, at the 3 mysterious bundles, weighing risk against potential reward. 100, the crowd murmured. $100 for a water-damaged unit was steep, even with the protected items. Stuart felt Kevin's fingers digging into his arm. They had $163. If he bid 110, they'd have 53 left. Not enough for the motel, barely enough for food and gas. But those bundles, 110, Stuart said. The crowd went quiet. Leo frowned, studying Stuart more carefully now. Recognition flickered across his face. He knew Stuart from the pawn shop, knew he was living in his truck, knew he couldn't afford to waste money on gambles. Leo shook his head and waved his hand dismissively. He was out. $110, the auctioneer called. Going once, going twice. He paused, scanning the crowd for any last-minute bids. Sold. To the gentleman in the back for $110. Stuart's legs felt weak. He'd just spent nearly everything they had on a storage unit full of water-damaged junk and 3 mystery bundles. Kevin stared at him. Dad, please tell me you know what you're doing. I don't, Stuart admitted, but Uncle Raymond protected those items for a reason. They waited as the other bidders dispersed, some grumbling about the waste of time. When the crowd thinned, Stuart approached the auction table where Bridget stood with her paperwork. She looked up as he approached, and her professional mask cracked. Stuart, I didn't know you were here. Hi, Bridget. I'm sorry. I really am. I gave you as much time as I could, but I know. You did more than you should have. I'm grateful. She looked relieved that he wasn't angry. You bid on it? Yeah, 110. He pulled the cash from his pocket, counting it out carefully. His hand trembled slightly as he placed the bills on the table. Bridget processed the payment and handed him a receipt and the new lock and key for the unit. You have 48 hours to clear everything out. We'll get it done today. She hesitated, then said quietly, I hope there's something worthwhile in there. You deserve some good luck. Stuart managed a small smile. Thanks, Bridget. He and Kevin walked back to Unit 47. Standing at the threshold felt surreal. This space had held pieces of their family, and now it was just wreckage and mystery. They stepped inside. The smell of mildew was stronger here, and Stuart's boots squelched on the damp concrete. Kevin began sorting through the ruined boxes, salvaging what little could be saved. Dad, look! Kevin held up a photo album. The cover was water-stained and warped, but he opened it carefully. Some pages were stuck together, others had dissolved completely, but in the middle of the album, a cluster of photos had survived, protected by the plastic sleeves and the layers of paper around them. Stuart took the album with shaking hands. There was Sarah, young and smiling, holding infant Kevin. There was Kevin at 5 years old, missing his front teeth. There was their old house, the one they'd lost. There was Uncle Raymond at a family barbecue, laughing at something off camera. I thought these were gone forever, Kevin said, his voice thick. Stuart couldn't speak. He held the album against his chest, feeling the weight of memories he'd thought were lost. After a moment, he set the album carefully in the truck bed and returned to the unit. Time to see what Uncle Raymond had protected so carefully. The 3 bundles sat on their pallet, dry and intact. Stuart pulled the first one toward the door, where the light was better. The plastic was thick, industrial grade, sealed with professional packing tape. Whatever was inside had been wrapped with care and intention. He pulled out his pocket knife and carefully cut through the tape and plastic. Inside was a device unlike anything Stuart had seen in civilian life. Sleek, angular, made of carbon fiber and lightweight alloys. Retractable rotors folded against the body. Ports and sensors dotted the surface. And on the side a label, Skytech Industries, Prototype Series Alpha, Unit No. 1, Confidential. Stuart stared at it, his engineering background immediately recognizing the sophistication of the design. This wasn't a consumer product. This was advanced technology, possibly military grade. What is that? Kevin asked, leaning over his shoulder. I don't know, but I think we need to find out. They unwrapped the other two bundles in the truck bed, not wanting to leave anything valuable visible in the storage unit. Each contained an identical device, sleek, sophisticated and tagged with sequential numbers. Unit 02 and Unit 03. Stuart examined them carefully, his engineer's mind cataloguing details. The construction was remarkable. Lightweight but clearly durable, with components he recognized from military applications. The retractable rotors suggested these were drones, but far more advanced than anything he'd seen in commercial markets. We need to look up Skytech Industries, Kevin said, already pulling out his phone. They sat in the truck cab, Kevin typing rapidly while Stuart studied the devices. The afternoon sun slanted through the windshield, illuminating dust motes and highlighting the contrast between their worn clothing and the sophisticated technology now in their possession. Got something, Kevin said. Skytech Industries, founded 2012, specialized in autonomous drone technology. They had military contracts, worked on classified projects, but he paused, scrolling. They went bankrupt in 2019. Legal disputes over patents, mismanagement, government contract cancellations. What happened to their assets? Supposedly liquidated. Court-ordered auction of all equipment and intellectual property. Kevin kept reading, his eyes widening. Dad, there are forum posts about these prototypes. Drone enthusiasts, tech collectors. They talk about Skytech's Alpha series like it's the Holy Grail. What do you mean? Kevin turned the phone toward him. A discussion thread from 6 months ago. Dozens of posts debating the fate of Skytech's prototype drones. People think they were destroyed or lost in the bankruptcy. The technology was years ahead of commercial drones. Autonomous AI, advanced navigation, some kind of proprietary sensor array. If these are authentic, how much are they worth? Kevin scrolled through more posts, his hand trembling slightly. Estimates range from $500,000 to $2 million each. The number hung in the air between them, too large to feel real. Stuart looked at the three devices in the truck bed, then at his son's shocked face, then back at the devices. That can't be right, Stuart said. These were just sitting in storage. Uncle Raymond worked in tech, didn't he? What if he worked at Skytech? Stuart's mind raced through memories of his late brother-in-law. Raymond had been private about his work, citing non-disclosure agreements and security clearances. He'd worked for several companies over the years, always in specialized engineering roles. Stuart had never asked many questions. People in that world often couldn't talk about their jobs anyway. We need to verify this, Stuart said. Before we get our hopes up, who do we ask? Stuart thought for a moment. The university, engineering department. Someone there might be able to tell us what we have. They spent the rest of the afternoon clearing out the storage unit, salvaging what little remained undamaged. Besides the photo album, they recovered a few documents in waterproof pouches, some of Kevin's childhood items in plastic totes, and a metal box containing papers Stuart would examine later. By 5 o'clock, they'd loaded everything into the truck and returned the key to Bridget. The three drones, carefully rewrapped, lay hidden under a tarp in the truck bed. The university campus was quiet on a Tuesday evening. Stuart parked near the engineering building, and they carried one of the wrapped drones inside, looking for anyone who might help them. A maintenance worker directed them to the 3rd floor, where a professor was still in her office. Professor Alberta Moss, according to the nameplate. Stuart knocked hesitantly. Yes? A woman in her 70s, with silver hair and sharp eyes, looked up from her desk. I'm sorry to bother you, Professor. We have something we'd like you to look at if you have a moment. It's a technical question. She studied them, their worn clothes, nervous expressions, the wrapped objects Stuart carried. What kind of technical question? We found this in a storage unit. We think it might be a drone, but we're not sure what kind or if it's worth anything. Her curiosity appeared piqued. Let me see. Stuart unwrapped the device on her desk. Professor Moss leaned forward, her casual expression shifting instantly to intense focus. She reached for a pair of glasses and examined the drone closely, not touching it at first, just observing. Where did you say you found this? A storage unit auction. It belonged to my late brother-in-law. She picked up the drone carefully, turning it over, examining the ports, the sensors, the construction. Her fingers traced the Skytech label. "Do you know what this is?" "We were hoping you could tell us." Professor Moss set the drone down and looked at Stuart with an expression somewhere between amazement and concern. "This is a Skytech Alpha Series prototype. I consulted on a project adjacent to this program 6 years ago. These drones represent some of the most advanced autonomous technology ever developed. The AI systems, the sensor arrays..." She paused. "These were supposed to have been destroyed. Are they worth anything?" She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Worth anything? Each of these, if they're functional, could be worth well over $1 million to the right buyer." But her expression grew serious. There could be legal complications. Skytech's bankruptcy was messy. Patents disputed, ownership unclear. If word gets out that you have these, you'll have lawyers, corporations, possibly even government agencies knocking on your door. Stuart's hope deflated slightly. "So we can't sell them?" "I didn't say that. But you need legal representation before you talk to anyone else. Don't post about this online, don't show it to collectors, don't mention it to anyone until you understand your legal position. We can't afford a lawyer." Professor Moss considered this. "Do you have any military service history?" "Navy, 6 years, engineering corps. There are veteran legal services, pro bono attorneys who help with complex cases. Let me make some calls." She pulled out her phone. "What's your name?" "Stuart Landry. This is my son, Kevin." She nodded and stepped into the hallway to make her call. Stuart and Kevin waited, the drone sitting innocently on the desk between them. "This is really happening," Kevin whispered. "Don't get excited yet. She said there could be legal problems. But Dad, even if we only get half of what they're worth..." "I know." Stuart put a hand on Kevin's shoulder. "But we've learned not to count on good things, haven't we?" Professor Moss returned. "I have a name for you. Randall Pierce downtown. He's a patent and intellectual property attorney who does pro bono work for veterans. I explained the situation generally, no specifics. He can see you tomorrow morning at 9. Stuart took the card she offered. "Thank you, Professor. I don't know how to..." "Just be careful. These drones could change your life, but they could also bring you problems. Don't trust anyone who makes immediate offers or pushes you to make quick decisions. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am." They rewrapped the drone and left campus. In the truck, Stuart sat with his hands on the steering wheel, processing everything. "Where do we sleep tonight?" Kevin asked. Stuart checked his wallet. $53 left. Not enough for a motel after paying for gas to get around town. "Same place as last night." Kevin nodded, disappointment flickering across his face, but not surprise. They'd been dreaming about a motel room, hot showers, real beds. But even with millions potentially sitting in the truck bed, tonight they'd still be sleeping in a parking lot. "Dad," Kevin said as Stuart started the engine, "do you think this is real? That we might actually..." "I don't know." "Kev, I've learned not to trust good news until it's already happened." But driving through the darkening streets, heading toward their usual parking spot behind the 24-hour fitness center, Stuart allowed himself a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, life was about to hand them something good. The Navy Challenge coin in his pocket felt heavier than usual, a reminder that he'd solved impossible problems before. Maybe this was just another puzzle to work through, one with much higher stakes. They slept poorly that night. Stuart kept waking, checking to ensure the tarp still covered the drones in the truck bed, listening for any sounds that might indicate someone was tampering with their vehicle. Kevin tossed in the passenger seat, unable to find a comfortable position, his mind clearly racing with possibilities. At dawn, they drove to the truck stop for showers. $20 for both of them, an expense Stuart normally avoided, except twice a week, but today they needed to look presentable for the lawyer. They shaved in the cracked mirrors, dressed in their cleanest clothes, and tried to look like people who belonged in a downtown law office. The morning was cold, frost-coating car windshields throughout the city. Stuart's breath fogged as they walked from the parking garage to the office building where Randall Pierce practiced. The lobby was all marble and brass, security guard at a desk, directories on the wall listing firms by floor number. Pierce's office was on the 7th floor. Stuart and Kevin rode the elevator in silence, both nervous, both trying not to show it. The reception area was modest but professional. A young woman at the desk looked up as they entered. "Stuart Landry!" "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Pierce is expecting you. Go right in." Randall Pierce stood as they entered his office, a man in his 50s with grey streaking his dark hair, wearing a crisp suit but an easy smile. "Stuart, Kevin, Professor Moss speaks highly of you. Please sit." His office walls displayed his credentials, law degrees, bar certifications, and a framed photograph of Pierce in navy dress whites. Stuart relaxed slightly. "Fellow veteran, Professor Moss mentioned you found something interesting," Pierce said, settling into his chair. "Tell me the story." Stuart explained everything: Uncle Raymond's death, the storage unit, the auction, the 3 drones. He unwrapped one of the devices and placed it on Pierce's desk. Pierce examined it carefully, taking photos with his phone, zooming in on the labels and serial numbers. Skytech Industries Alpha Series. "I remember when this company imploded. Ugly bankruptcy, disputed patents, government contracts cancelled. The prototypes were supposed to have been accounted for in asset liquidation, but they weren't." Kevin asked. "Apparently not these 3, which creates an interesting legal situation." Pierce pulled out a legal pad and began taking notes. "Your uncle, Raymond what?" "Raymond Hatcher," Pierce wrote it down. "Do you know if he worked for Skytech?" "I'm not certain. He was always secretive about his work. Security clearances, non-disclosure agreements. We'll need to research his employment history. If he legitimately saved these as part of his work, if they were given to him, or if he simply purchased them before the bankruptcy, your ownership claim becomes stronger. But if he took them without authorization, he wouldn't have done that," Stuart said firmly. "Raymond was honest, careful. If he protected these drones, he had a legitimate reason." Pierce nodded. "I'm not questioning his character. I'm mapping potential legal challenges. When the bankruptcy trustee learns these drones exist, and they will learn eventually, they'll claim these should have been part of the liquidated assets. We need documentation proving otherwise. I have a box of Raymond's papers from the storage unit. Haven't looked through it yet. Let's do that now." Stuart retrieved the metal box from the truck. Back in Pierce's office, they opened it carefully. Inside were folders, USB drives, and a sealed envelope with Sarah's name written on it in Raymond's handwriting. Stuart's hands shook as he picked up the envelope. His late wife's name, written by her dead brother, addressed to someone who would never read it. Kevin moved closer, both of them staring at the envelope as if it might explain everything. "Go ahead," Pierce said gently. "Open it." Stuart broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, dated March 2018, 2 months before Raymond died. The letter began simply, "Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you need to know what I've protected for you." Stuart's voice wavered as he read aloud. Raymond explained that he'd worked as a senior engineer at Skytech Industries, that he'd seen the bankruptcy coming months before it happened, and that certain assets would be destroyed or lost in legal battles that had nothing to do with their actual value and everything to do with corporate egos and mismanagement. "I've secured 3 Alpha Series prototypes," the letter continued. "They're legally mine. I purchased them through proper channels when the company began liquidating non-essential assets. I have the receipts, the transfer documentation, everything you'll need to prove ownership. But the timing is important. Patent disputes will take years to resolve. Don't try to sell these until the legal landscape clears. When it does, these drones will be worth a fortune. I'm leaving them to you, Sarah, so you and Stuart and Kevin will have security. Keep them safe. Keep them hidden. When the time is right, they'll change your life." The letter ended with expressions of love and hopes that Sarah would never need to read it, that he'd be able to give her the drones in person someday. Stuart set the letter down, unable to speak. Kevin's eyes were wet. Pierce picked up the letter carefully. "This changes everything. He purchased them legitimately. If we can find the documentation," he mentioned. Stuart sorted through the folders in the box. Employment records, tax documents, and then a folder labeled Alpha Acquisition. Inside were receipts dated January 2018, showing Raymond Hatch's purchase of 3 prototype drones for $15,000 total, a liquidation price as Skytech began its collapse. Transfer of ownership documents signed by a Skytech executive and notarized. Everything legal, everything documented. "There it is," Pierce said, satisfaction in his voice. "This is your proof of ownership. Your uncle bought these fair and square before the bankruptcy filing. They were his property, transferred to your wife through inheritance, and then to you when she passed. So we can sell them?" Stewart asked. "Yes, but carefully. Word is already spreading. Professor Moss said you posted something on a forum." Kevin looked embarrassed. "I asked a general question about Skytech prototypes yesterday. Didn't use real names or say we had any. Even that might have attracted attention. These drones are legendary in certain circles." Pierce leaned back in his chair. "Here's what I recommend. Don't respond to any online inquiries. Don't show these to collectors or small buyers. We approach major corporations, aerospace companies, defense contractors, tech giants, and we let them compete for the privilege of acquiring these. We structure the sale to protect you legally and financially. We do this right, and you'll get maximum value. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe months. But you'll get millions instead of thousands. Worth the wait?" Stewart thought about the $53 in his wallet, the truck they'd been living in for 8 months, the winter coming. Waiting months sounded impossible, but accepting lowball offers from the wrong buyer would be equally foolish. "We can wait," Stewart said. "If you think that's best." "I do." And Stewart, Pierce's expression grew serious. "Once we start making inquiries, your life is going to change rapidly. Media attention, pressure from multiple parties, people offering advice you didn't ask for. You'll need to stay grounded. Can you do that?" Stewart touched the Navy challenge coin in his pocket. "I've handled pressure before." "Good. Let's change your life." Pierce worked fast. Within 3 days, he'd authenticated the drone's provenance, verified Raymond's employment history at Skytech, and prepared a comprehensive package documenting legitimate ownership. By the end of the first week, he'd made discreet inquiries to 4 major technology companies. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Techwing Solutions, an aerospace manufacturer specializing in commercial drones, called within hours of Pierce's inquiry. Their CEO wanted a meeting. 2 days later, a defense contractor named Stratford Dynamics reached out with an expression of serious interest. Then came inquiries from AutoNav Systems and Horizon Robotics. Stewart's phone began ringing constantly. Journalists who'd somehow caught wind of the story, technology bloggers wanting interviews, forum users who'd connected dots from Kevin's earlier post. Pierce instructed them to say nothing, refer all calls to his office, and maintain absolute silence about the drone's location. But staying silent became difficult when someone vandalized the truck. It happened on a Wednesday night. Stewart and Kevin had parked behind the fitness center as usual, settling in for sleep. Around 2 in the morning, Stewart woke to the sound of breaking glass. He bolted upright, saw a figure running across the parking lot, and discovered the driver's side window shattered, glass scattered across the seat. A note had been left on the dashboard. "We know what you have. Sell it to us or lose everything." No signature, no contact information, just a threat. Kevin called the police while Stewart swept glass from the seats, his hands shaking with anger and fear. The responding officer took a report, photographed the damage, but offered little hope of finding the culprit. "Probably just kids," he said, though his eyes said he didn't believe it. "We can't stay here," Kevin said after the officer left, "not with those drones in the truck." Stewart knew he was right. They'd become targets. Anyone who knew about the drones, and apparently several people did, might try to steal them or force Stewart into a bad deal. Pierce offered a solution the next morning. "Stay at my guest house, small cottage behind my main property, furnished, secure, completely private, no charge." Stewart's pride bristled. "We can't accept charity." "It's not charity. It's protecting my client's assets until we close a deal. Consider it part of my legal services." Kevin jumped at the offer before Stewart could refuse again. "We accept. Thank you." The cottage was small, One bedroom, a pull-out couch, tiny kitchen, but after 8 months in a truck, it felt palatial. Real walls, a door with a lock, a bathroom with a shower that didn't require tokens, a refrigerator, a bed. That first night, Stuart stood in the bedroom doorway watching Kevin sleep on an actual mattress, a real pillow under his head, and felt something break loose in his chest. His son deserved this. Deserved so much more than sleeping in truck cabs and showering at truck stops. "We're going to make this right," Stuart whispered to the darkness. "I promise." The next morning, Pierce introduced them to a financial advisor named Gerald Hoskins. Tall, thin, meticulous, Gerald walked them through scenarios. "Assuming a sale price of $3 million, Gerald said, writing figures on a whiteboard, "you'll face capital gains tax, legal fees, and various other expenses. Net proceeds would be approximately $2 million. $2 million. The number still felt unreal. "What if we get more?" Kevin asked. "Same percentage calculations apply, but let's be conservative in our planning." Gerald launched into explanations of investment strategies, tax sheltering, estate planning, concepts completely foreign to Stuart's world of day labor and parking lot survival. Stuart absorbed what he could, but his mind kept returning to simpler calculations. $2 million, a house for Kevin, a reliable vehicle, money for Kevin's education, security for the first time in years. "What about giving money away?" Stuart asked. "To people who helped us." Gerald smiled. "Charitable giving has tax benefits, but you should focus first on securing your own foundation. Help yourself, then help others." But Stuart couldn't stop thinking about Francine's diner, struggling to stay afloat. About Leo's pawn shop, where he treated desperate people with dignity. About Bridget at the storage facility, who'd given him more chances than policy allowed. The following Monday brought the first serious offer. TechWing Solutions invited Stuart and Kevin to their Seattle headquarters. The company sent plane tickets, business class, which Stuart had never experienced. Pierce accompanied them, briefcase full of documentation. The flight terrified Stuart. He'd flown in military transport during his Navy years, but never on a commercial jet, never in seats this comfortable, never with flight attendants offering drinks and warm towels. Kevin kept glancing at him, making sure he was okay, and Stuart appreciated his son's quiet support. Seattle's skyline emerged through clouds as they descended. TechWing's headquarters occupied a modern glass building near the waterfront, all sharp angles and reflective surfaces. Inside, everything was white and chrome, and aggressively contemporary. The CEO, Marcus Brennan, Stuart caught himself, realized he'd mentally used a forbidden name, corrected it to someone else, anyone else. The CEO, whose name Stuart made himself forget immediately, greeted them personally. Mid-40s, expensive suit, practiced handshake. They were led to a conference room overlooking Puget Sound. Lunch was catered, sushi, which Stuart had never eaten, and sandwiches, which he gratefully chose instead. Kevin tried the sushi, making faces that suggested he wasn't impressed. The presentation began. TechWing's history, their market position, their vision for commercial drone applications. Graphs showing projected growth, videos demonstrating their current product line, all building to their interest in Skytech's Alpha Series prototypes. "These drones represent a generational leap in autonomous technology," the CEO explained. "The AI systems alone are worth millions in research and development savings. The sensor arrays, the flight control algorithms, everything about them is years ahead of current market offerings. With your 3 prototypes, we could accelerate our product development by 36 months. What are you offering?" Pierce asked, cutting through the sales pitch. The CEO smiled. $1.2 million for all 3 units. Cash, wire transfer, closing within 2 weeks. Stuart's breath caught. $1.2 million, life-changing money, enough to solve every problem they had. But Pierce's expression didn't change. "We'll consider your offer. We have other meetings scheduled." The CEO's smile tightened slightly. "I should mention we're prepared to move quickly. Other buyers will require more due diligence, more legal review. We can close fast." Speed isn't our primary concern, Pierce said calmly. Fair value is. The meeting ended cordially but coolly. In the elevator down, Stewart turned to Pierce. $1.2 million, that's low, Pierce finished. They know these drones are worth more. They're hoping you'll take the first serious offer out of desperation. He looked at Stewart carefully. Are you desperate enough to accept less than fair value? Stewart thought about the truck, the parking lots, the 8 months of struggle. Yes, he was desperate, but he'd also learned patience. No, we wait for better. Good. Because I've got 3 more companies wanting to meet with us. The competing offers arrived within days of each other. Stratford Dynamics proposed $1.5 million with a 5-year consulting contract. AutoNav Systems countered at $1.8 million all cash. Horizon Robotics offered $2.3 million plus royalty agreements on any products developed using the drone technology. Stewart and Kevin sat in Pierce's office, reviewing the proposals, trying to understand complex legal language about licensing rights, non-compete clauses, and intellectual property transfers. The Horizon offer looks best on paper, Pierce explained, but the royalty structure is complicated. Payments contingent on product success, which may never materialize. Stratford's consulting contract is valuable, steady income for 5 years, but locks you into exclusivity. AutoNav's cash offer is clean, simple, immediate. Which would you take? Stewart asked. That's not my decision. What matters most to you? Maximum payout? Long-term security? Quick resolution? Stewart looked at Kevin, who'd been unusually quiet. What do you think? Kevin hesitated. The consulting contracts interest me. Not just for the money, but... He paused, gathering his thoughts. We'd have real careers. Not just a one-time payment, but actual work. Something to build on. Stewart felt pride swell in his chest. Kevin was thinking long-term, thinking smart. You're right. That matters. But before they could decide, complications emerged. Pierce received a letter from the SkyTech bankruptcy trustee's legal team. The trustee had learned about the drones. Someone had leaked information, probably from one of the companies Stewart had met with, and was now claiming the prototypes should have been included in the original asset liquidation. They want 60% of any sale, Pierce said, his jaw tight with frustration, claiming fiduciary duty to SkyTech's creditors. But Raymond bought them legally, Kevin protested. We have the documentation. I know, and we'll fight this, but it complicates everything. The companies making offers will get nervous. Some might withdraw, others will lower their bids, knowing legal battles could freeze the sale for years. Stewart felt familiar dread settling in his stomach. Of course something would go wrong. Of course lawyers and bureaucracy would try to take away their chance at a better life. He'd experienced this before, during Sarah's illness, when insurance companies denied claims and collection agencies hounded him despite having done everything right. How long could this take? Stewart asked. Months, maybe years if the trustee pushes hard enough. Stewart stood, walked to the window, stared out at the city below. People going about their lives, unaware that 7 floors up, a man's future was being decided by legal technicalities and corporate interests. Kevin joined him. We'll figure this out, Dad. I'm tired of fighting systems that are designed to crush people like us. I know. But we're not alone this time. We have Pierce. We have documentation. We're right. Being right didn't always matter, Stewart thought. But he didn't say it aloud. Pierce made calls, negotiated, pushed back against the trustees' lawyers. Days stretched into a week. The media caught wind of the dispute, and suddenly Stewart's story was everywhere. Local news, national technology blogs, even a segment on a cable news program about storage unit Treasure Spark's legal battle. A journalist named Sheldon Gray from a major technology publication called Repeatedly, finally reaching Stewart directly. I want to tell your story properly, Gray said. Not just the drones, but your journey. The homelessness, your son, the struggle. Give me an exclusive interview, and I'll make sure the public understands what's at stake. Stewart's instinct was to refuse. Privacy felt precious, especially now. But Pierce suggested the interview might help. Public sympathy can pressure the trustee to negotiate reasonably. If people understand you're a homeless veteran fighting corporate interests, the court of public opinion matters. The interview took 2 hours. Gray was thorough, respectful, asking about Sarah's death, the medical bills, losing the house, living in the truck. About Raymond's sacrifice, the storage auction, the drone's discovery. About Pierce's pro bono representation and the companies competing to buy the technology. What do you want people to know? Gray asked as the interview concluded. Stewart thought carefully. That systems fail people. That sometimes doing everything right still leads to losing everything. But also, he glanced at Kevin, that family matters. That second chances exist. That we're still here, still fighting, still hoping. The article published 2 days later under the headline, Homeless Veteran Fights Corporate Giants for Family Legacy. It spread rapidly across social media, generating thousands of comments, shares, and expressions of support. The response surprised Stewart. Messages poured in from other veterans, from people who'd experienced homelessness, from families struggling with medical debt. Some sent small donations despite Stewart's protests. Others simply shared their own stories, finding connection in his struggle. A hashtag emerged, Justice for Stewart. It trended briefly on social media, amplified by advocates and sympathetic public figures. The pressure worked. Within a week, the bankruptcy trustee's lawyers contacted Pierce with a settlement offer. 25% of the final sale, Pierce reported, down from their original 60% demand. They'll acknowledge your ownership, drop their objections, and the sale can proceed. 25% still felt like losing, but Stewart recognized it as pragmatic compromise. And if we refuse? Years in court, mounting legal costs, uncertainty that will scare away buyers. This is the best deal we'll get. Stewart agreed to the settlement. With the legal obstacle removed, the companies renewed their interest. But now a fifth player entered. Vanguard Aerospace, a defense contractor with deep pockets and government connections. Their offer, $3.9 million, plus consulting contracts for both Stewart and Kevin, $150,000 annually for Stewart as technical advisor, $80,000 for Kevin as project liaison. This is the one, Pierce said after reviewing the terms. Real money, real careers, long-term security, benefits, retirement plans, professional development. Everything you need. Stewart studied the contract, his engineering background helping him understand the technical language. Vanguard wanted his expertise, recognized his Navy experience, saw value beyond just the drones. They were offering him a career, not just a payout. And Kevin would have a career too. A path forward, a foundation to build on. What do you think? Stewart asked Kevin. I think Uncle Raymond would be proud. And Mom too. That night in Pierce's guest cottage, Stewart and Kevin talked until late. About accepting Vanguard's offer, about what came next, about the future that suddenly seemed possible. We should get an apartment, Kevin said. Nothing fancy, just somewhere to live while we figure everything out. A house, Stewart countered. Small but ours. No landlords, no lease worries, permanent. Kevin smiled. A house sounds good. They found a rental the next day, a small 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, available immediately. First month's rent and security deposit totaled $1,800. Stewart had exactly $2,000 saved from recent day labor jobs and Pierce's generous loan. The apartment was modest, slightly worn, but clean and safe. Their first night there, Stewart made dinner, spaghetti, nothing fancy, and they ate at a real table in a real kitchen. This is nice, Kevin said quietly. Yeah, Stewart agreed. It really is. The closing with Vanguard Aerospace was scheduled for 2 weeks out. Pierce spent those days finalizing contracts, coordinating with Vanguard's legal team, ensuring every detail was perfect. Stewart and Kevin settled into their apartment, adjusting to the luxury of walls and privacy and warmth. 1 week before closing, Kevin was organizing their belongings, sorting through items salvaged from the storage unit, deciding what to keep and what to discard. The 3 drones sat carefully wrapped on the kitchen table, waiting for their transfer to Vanguard. Kevin picked up one of the original plastic bundles, intending to flatten it for recycling. Something about the weight felt wrong. He'd handled these bundles multiple times, knew how they should feel. This one was heavier than it should be. He examined it more carefully, running his hands along the thick plastic sheeting. There, a slight irregularity in the bottom corner. He grabbed scissors and carefully cut away the outer layer. A false bottom, concealed so cleverly that they'd missed it entirely during their initial examination. "Dad," Kevin called, his voice tight. "You need to see this." Stuart emerged from the bedroom where he'd been reviewing consulting contract details. "What's wrong?" Kevin had cut away more of the plastic, revealing a hidden compartment in the base of the wrapping. Inside was a fourth drone, smaller than the others, different design, wrapped in additional protective layers. Stuart's engineering instincts immediately recognized this was something else entirely. The construction was even more sophisticated than the other three units. Military-grade materials, sealed ports suggesting classified electronics, and the labeling "Project Nightingale," Stuart read aloud, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Do not liquidate. Congressional oversight required." They stared at the drone, both understanding simultaneously that they'd just stumbled into something far more serious than valuable technology. Kevin grabbed his laptop, typing frantically. "Project Nightingale. There's got to be information somewhere." The search results were sparse but damning. Project Nightingale had been a classified domestic surveillance program, active from 2015 to 2017. Controversial, accused of constitutional violations, congressional investigation, program officially terminated, all equipment ordered destroyed under federal oversight. "This drone shouldn't exist," Kevin said. "According to this, every Nightingale unit was supposed to be destroyed." Stuart examined the drone more carefully. Serial numbers indicated it was a prototype, possibly the only one of its kind. The seals on its data port suggested they'd never been opened. Whatever information it contained was still inside. "Call Pierce," Stuart said, "right now." Pierce arrived within the hour, his usual composure cracking when he saw the fourth drone. "This changes everything. This is classified government technology. Possession alone could be a federal crime." "We didn't know it was there," Kevin protested. "Doesn't matter. Intent isn't relevant with classified material." Pierce photographed the drone from every angle, documented its markings, and pulled out his phone. "We need to contact the FBI immediately. Full disclosure. Claim complete ignorance. Cooperate entirely." "The Vanguard deal," Stuart began, "is probably over. Once the government learns about this, they'll claim all 4 drones present national security concerns. They'll seize everything, and we'll be lucky if we're not prosecuted." Stuart sank into a chair, feeling his future collapse again. Of course this would happen. 1 week from financial security, and instead they'd found evidence of something that could destroy them. "Why did Raymond have this?" Kevin asked quietly. Stuart reread the letter his brother-in-law had written. "When the time is right." The phrase took on new meaning now. Raymond hadn't just been protecting valuable technology, he'd been protecting evidence. "He was a whistleblower," Stuart said. "He documented something illegal, saved proof, intended to reveal it when he could do so safely." Pierce nodded slowly. "That's my read too. This drone probably contains evidence of constitutional violations. Government overreach, illegal surveillance. Your brother-in-law preserved it. So what do we do?" "Exactly what I said. Contact the FBI, full disclosure." But Pierce hesitated. "We also contact civil liberties organizations. If this drone contains evidence of government wrongdoing, there might be whistleblower protections available. We need to be smart about how we handle this." The FBI meeting happened the next day. 2 agents, a man and woman in dark suits, serious expressions, met them at Pierce's office. Stuart showed them the 4th drone, explained how they'd found it, provided complete transparency. The female agent examined the drone carefully. Project Nightingale was shut down for good reasons. Serious constitutional concerns. If this unit contains operational data or surveillance records, it's extremely sensitive. Are we in trouble? Kevin asked. For finding it? No. For keeping it once you knew what it was. That would be a problem, but you're reporting it immediately, which speaks to your intentions. She looked at Stuart. Your brother-in-law worked on this program. I don't know for certain, but it seems likely. The agents conferred quietly. The male agent made a phone call, speaking in low tones. When he returned, his expression was grave. We need to take custody of all 4 drones. National security protocols. What about our sale to Vanguard? Stuart asked, though he already knew the answer. That can't proceed, not until we've completed our investigation and cleared the technology for private transfer. Could take months. Stuart's heart sank. Months. Back to uncertainty. Back to waiting. Back to struggling. But then the female agent added, however, if this drone contains what we think it contains, evidence related to ongoing oversight investigations, there may be compensation available. Whistleblower provisions, rewards for information leading to accountability. We can't promise anything, but you wouldn't be left empty-handed. Pierce stepped forward. My clients will cooperate fully, but we want assurances they won't face prosecution, and we want fair treatment regarding the other 3 drones, which have no classification issues. Understood. We'll need formal statements, complete documentation, and custody of all 4 units. But Mr. Landry, the agent looked at Stuart directly, your brother-in-law did something brave. Preserving evidence of government overreach takes courage. We'll honor that by treating you fairly. The story broke 2 days later. Despite attempts at discretion, someone leaked information to the press. Hidden drone could expose government surveillance scandal, read the headlines. Media descended on Stuart's apartment building. Reporters called constantly. Camera crews waited in the parking lot. Congressional staffers contacted Pierce. 2 separate House committees wanted Stuart to testify about how he'd discovered the drone, what his brother-in-law had told him, what he knew about Project Nightingale. Stuart felt overwhelmed, crushed by the weight of unwanted attention and political controversy. He just wanted to sell some drones, rebuild his life, give Kevin opportunities. Now he was caught in a national scandal involving classified technology and government accountability. I can't do this, Stuart told Kevin one evening, staring at his phone as another journalist called. This isn't what I signed up for. Uncle Raymond trusted Mom to handle this. Mom trusted you. Maybe this is what we're supposed to do, finish what he started. I'm not a political person. I'm not an activist. I'm just a guy trying to survive. Maybe that's exactly why you should testify. You're real. You're honest. People will believe you. Stuart looked at his son, seeing maturity and wisdom he hadn't fully recognized before. When had Kevin grown up? When had he become someone Stuart could lean on? Okay, Stuart said finally. We'll see this through, together. The congressional testimony was scheduled for the following Wednesday. Stuart had 5 days to prepare. 5 days to transform from a man who'd been sleeping in his truck 2 months ago into someone who could speak coherently before Congress, cameras, and the nation. Pierce connected him with civil liberties lawyers who specialized in whistleblower cases. They briefed him for hours, explaining the political landscape, the questions he'd likely face, the traps to avoid. Don't speculate. Stick to facts. Don't let hostile questioners bait you into saying more than you know. Stuart took notes on a yellow legal pad, his handwriting cramped and messy. He crossed out sentences, rewrote them, tried to find simple language that conveyed truth without sounding rehearsed. Kevin helped him practice, playing the role of various committee members, some sympathetic, others aggressive. Mr. Landry, isn't it true you're profiting from classified technology? No, sir. I found these drones in a storage unit. I reported them immediately when I understood their significance. But you were planning to sell them for millions. The other 3 drones, yes, they weren't classified. My brother-in-law purchased them legally. The 4th drone, Project Nightingale. I reported that to the FBI as soon as I discovered it. Kevin nodded approval. Good. Stay calm, stick to facts, don't get defensive. The media attention intensified. Documentary crews that had been following Stewart's story captured the preparation process. Journalists wrote profiles exploring his journey from homelessness to congressional witness. Support poured in from veteran organizations, civil liberties groups, and ordinary citizens who saw Stewart as an everyman caught in extraordinary circumstances. But not everyone was sympathetic. Some commentators questioned his motives, suggested he was exploiting classified information for personal gain, implied Raymond had been a traitor rather than a whistleblower. The accusations stung, but Pierce advised ignoring them. Don't engage with critics. Don't defend yourself in the media. Save everything for your testimony. That's where truth matters. 2 days before the hearing, Francine visited the apartment. She brought a casserole, homemade rolls, and a fierce hug that nearly broke Stewart's composure. The whole town's proud of you, she said. You're standing up for what's right. That takes courage. I don't feel courageous. I feel terrified. That's what courage is, being terrified and doing it anyway. She pressed a small bag into his hands. For luck. From everyone at the diner. Inside were cards, notes of encouragement, small gifts. A keychain from Leo, a cross from Bridget. A photo of the diner staff holding a banner that read, "We believe in Stewart." Stewart's eyes burned with tears. He refused to let fall. Tell them thank you. Tell them, his voice broke. Tell them I'll try not to let them down. You couldn't disappoint us if you tried. The night before the testimony, Stewart couldn't sleep. He sat in the apartment's small living room, reviewing his notes for the 100th time, trying to memorize facts that kept slipping through his anxious mind. Kevin found him at 2 a.m, staring at the legal pad. You're going to do great, Dad. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I make Raymond look bad? What if I destroy any chance we have at selling those drones? Kevin sat beside him. Then we figure it out, like we always do, together. Stewart looked at his son, 23 years old, sitting in an apartment they could only afford because of Pierce's generosity, facing an uncertain future because Stewart had gambled on a storage unit. But Kevin wasn't complaining, wasn't blaming, was simply there, steady and supportive. I'm proud of you, Stewart said. In case I don't say it enough, I know, Dad, and I'm proud of you too. They flew to Washington on Tuesday afternoon. Pierce accompanied them, along with one of the civil liberties lawyers, a sharp woman named Patricia Owens, who'd briefed Stewart on constitutional law and surveillance oversight. The Capitol building was overwhelming. Stewart had seen it in photographs and news broadcasts his entire life, but standing before it in person made him feel impossibly small. Marble steps, towering columns, the weight of history and power concentrated in stone and symbolism. Inside was worse. Echoing hallways, important people moving with purpose, security checkpoints, the constant reminder that he didn't belong in this world. They were led to a waiting room outside the committee chamber. Other witnesses sat nervously. A former Skytech executive, a civil liberties advocate, a government oversight investigator. Stewart didn't speak to them, didn't make eye contact, focused on controlling his breathing. Pierce reviewed key points one final time. Remember, you're not on trial. You're helping an investigation. Be honest, be direct, be yourself. What if myself isn't good enough? It will be. At 10 o'clock, a staffer called Stewart's name. Time. The walk to the witness table felt eternal. The committee room was packed. Journalists, spectators, committee members arranged in a semicircle on an elevated platform. Cameras pointed at the witness chair like weapons. Bright lights made Stewart squint. He was sworn in, his hand trembling as he raised it. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The committee chairman, an older man with grey hair and a kind face, began with a statement thanking Stewart for appearing voluntarily, acknowledging his military service, expressing sympathy for his hardships. Mr. Landry, can you tell us in your own words how you came to possess these drones? Stewart took a breath and began. He told the story simply. The storage unit auction, finding the 3 wrapped drones, learning about Skytech, discovering the 4th drone with Kevin's help. His voice steadied as he spoke, the facts providing structure to contain his anxiety. Questions followed. Some were straightforward, seeking information. Others were hostile, implying wrongdoing. Stewart answered each carefully, never speculating, always returning to what he knew for certain. A senator from the opposition party pressed him aggressively. "Mr. Landry, you expect us to believe you just happened to find classified technology worth millions, that you weren't trying to profit from stolen government property?" Stewart met the senator's eyes. "Sir, I didn't know the fourth drone existed until a week ago. I reported it to the FBI within hours of discovering it. As for the other 3 drones, my brother-in-law purchased them legally before Skytech's bankruptcy. I have documentation proving ownership. I'm not trying to profit from anything stolen. I'm trying to provide for my son and honor my family's legacy." The senator wasn't satisfied, but other committee members looked sympathetic. A congresswoman from California asked about Stewart's homelessness, his struggles with the VA system, the failures that had left a veteran living in his truck. Stewart answered honestly, describing the 8 months in parking lots, the difficulty finding work with an injury and no permanent address, the shame of watching Kevin sacrifice his education to stay with him. "And now," the congresswoman said gently, "you're here, testifying before Congress about surveillance overreach and whistleblower protection. How does that feel?" "Overwhelming, ma'am. I never wanted to be involved in anything political. I just wanted to rebuild my life. But my brother-in-law did something important. He preserved evidence of wrongdoing. If testifying here honors his memory and helps ensure accountability, then I'm glad to do it." The room fell quiet. Stewart had spoken from the heart, and the sincerity resonated. The testimony continued through the afternoon. Technical questions about the drone's specifications, which Stewart answered, drawing on his engineering background. Questions about Raymond's character, which Stewart defended passionately. Questions about the bankruptcy trustee's claims, the competing offers from corporations, the legal battles he'd faced. Through it all, Stewart maintained his composure. He didn't grandstand or seek sympathy. He simply told the truth in plain language, letting the facts speak for themselves. During a recess, Pierce pulled him aside. "You're doing exceptionally well. The committee chairman is impressed. Even the hostile questioners are running out of ammunition. How much longer?" "Another hour, maybe 2. Then you're done." The final session focused on the 4th drone itself. The committee's technical expert testified that preliminary analysis showed the Nightingale unit contained encrypted data, likely surveillance records and documentation of the program's operations. The information was relevant to ongoing oversight investigations into potential constitutional violations. The committee chairman addressed Stewart directly. "Mr. Landry, your cooperation has been invaluable. By preserving this evidence and reporting it promptly, you've aided congressional oversight and protected the public interest. This committee commends your integrity." Relief flooded through Stewart. Not condemnation, but commendation. Not prosecution, but praise. Outside the hearing room, media swarmed. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Pierce guided Stewart through the crowd, offering only a brief statement. "Mr. Landry is grateful for the committee's recognition. He wants privacy now to move forward with his life." No further questions. In the car back to the hotel, Stewart exhaled deeply. "Is it over?" "The testimony, yes. But there's still resolution needed on the drones, the sale to Vanguard, compensation for the 4th unit. We have work ahead." That evening, Pierce received a call from the committee chairman's office. A private conversation was requested. Stewart and Kevin waited anxiously while Pierce spoke in hushed tones in the hotel hallway. When he returned, his expression was carefully neutral. "The committee is voting tomorrow on several motions. One commends your cooperation. Another directs the FBI to expedite their investigation of the Nightingale drone. And critically, they're recommending the government drop any claims to the first 3 drones. You'll be free to complete the Vanguard sale." "Really?" Kevin's voice cracked with hope. "Additionally, there's compensation being discussed for the 4th drone. $500,000 for your cooperation and the evidentiary value of what Raymond preserved." "It's not final but likely." Stewart did the math quickly. 3.9 million from Vanguard, minus 25% to the bankruptcy trustee, minus legal fees and taxes, plus 500,000 for the Nightingale drone. Even after everything, approximately $2.8 million net. Enough to change everything. When? Stewart asked. Vanguard wants to close within 2 weeks, assuming the government clears the 3 drones, as promised. The committee votes tomorrow. If it passes, we move forward immediately. That night, Stewart barely slept. Not from anxiety this time, but from cautious, fragile hope. He'd testified. He'd told the truth. He'd honored Raymond's sacrifice. And now, maybe, finally, life was about to reward rather than punish him. The committee vote passed the next morning, unanimous approval on all motions. News coverage was overwhelmingly positive. Stewart's testimony had resonated, his honesty cutting through political posturing. Editorial boards praised his integrity. Veteran organizations highlighted his story as an example of system failures and individual resilience. 1 week later, Stewart sat in a conference room at Vanguard Aerospace headquarters. The closing documents were spread before him. Transfer agreements for the 3 drones, consulting contracts for himself and Kevin, tax forms, wire transfer authorizations. Pierce reviewed each document carefully before sliding them to Stewart for signature. This is it. Once you sign, the money transfers, the drones become Vanguard's property, and you begin your consulting work next month. Stewart picked up the pen. His hand didn't shake. After everything, the homelessness, the struggle, the legal battles, the congressional testimony, this moment felt almost anticlimactic. Just signatures on paper, changing everything. He signed his name methodically on each document. Kevin signed his consulting contract, his expression somewhere between disbelief and joy. The Vanguard CEO stood, extending his hand. Welcome to the team, Stewart. We're honored to work with you. The technology you've provided will save lives. Search and rescue operations, disaster response, environmental monitoring. Your brother-in-law's work will have lasting positive impact. That's what matters most, Stewart said. That it serves good purposes. The wire transfer was confirmed within minutes. Pierce showed Stewart the notification on his phone. $3.9 million deposited. The government's $500,000 would follow within 30 days, after final paperwork cleared. Stewart stared at the number. Even after fees and taxes, more money than he'd ever imagined having. Not just survival money, but life-building money. Future money. Outside the building, Kevin grabbed Stewart in a fierce hug. We did it, Dad. We actually did it. We did it together. They returned to their apartment that evening, the small 2-bedroom rental that had felt so luxurious after months in the truck. Now it felt temporary, a way station rather than a destination. We should look for a house, Kevin said, echoing the conversation they'd had weeks ago. Something permanent. Stewart pulled out his phone and opened his banking app, still hardly believing the balance displayed. Yeah, let's find a home. But first there were calls to make. Stewart dialed Francine's number. Stewart, how did it go? We closed the deal. Everything's official. Oh, honey, I'm so happy for you. Francine, I need to ask you something. How much would it take to keep the diner from closing? To make necessary repairs, update equipment, carry you through the slow season? Silence on the line. Then quietly, why are you asking? Because I want to invest. $50,000 interest-free loan. You pay it back when you can, no pressure. The diner has been there for me when I had nothing. Let me be there for you now. She was crying. Stewart, that's too much. It's not charity. It's business. I believe in you, and I believe in that diner. Will you accept? Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. The next call went to Leo at the pawn shop. Stewart explained what he wanted. To pay off every active pawn ticket Leo currently held, freeing items for customers who were struggling. Leo was speechless for a long moment. Stewart, that's about $8,000 worth of tickets. I know. Consider it paid. And Leo, thank you for treating me with dignity when I had nothing. You never made me feel less than human. You never were less than human. You were just going through hard times. Well, now I can help others going through theirs. Stewart made a third call, a donation to the local homeless services organization. $100,000 earmarked for veteran support programs. The director who took the call initially thought it was a prank. "This is real," Stewart assured her. "I've been where they are. I want to help." Kevin watched his father make these calls, pride evident on his face. "Uncle Raymond and Mom would be proud of you." "I hope so." Over the following weeks, Stewart and Kevin settled into their new reality. They went house hunting with a real estate agent, looking at properties in safe neighborhoods with good schools nearby. Kevin was thinking ahead to his own family someday. They found a house that felt right, a 1950s ranch style, 3 bedrooms, solid construction but needing cosmetic updates. Nothing fancy but honest and well built. Stewart could see the potential, could already envision the renovations he'd make himself. The offer was accepted at $285,000. The closing felt more significant than the Vanguard deal. This was permanent. This was home. Moving day arrived on a bright Saturday morning. Francine came with food, feeding the small crew of helpers. Leo arrived with tools as a housewarming gift, quality equipment that had probably come through his shop. Bridget brought plants for the small garden. Stewart stood in the doorway of his new house, watching Kevin arrange furniture in the living room, and felt emotion overwhelm him. 9 months ago, they'd been sleeping in a truck. Today they had a home. That evening, after their friends had left and boxes were still stacked everywhere, Stewart and Kevin sat on the back porch drinking coffee. The yard was small but private, bordered by mature trees. Stars were visible above, something Stewart had forgotten to notice during the months of survival. "I start at Vanguard next week," Kevin said. "I'm nervous." "You'll be great. You've got good instincts and you're a fast learner." "What about you? Your consulting starts the same day." Stewart nodded. "It's been years since I worked as an engineer. I hope I remember enough to be useful. They wouldn't have hired you if they didn't think you could do the job." Stewart pulled the Navy Challenge coin from his pocket, his constant companion through everything. He turned it over in his fingers, feeling the weight of it, the memories attached. "I want you to have this." Kevin looked surprised. "Dad, that's yours. Your commanding officer gave you that, and now I'm giving it to you. It represents problem-solving perseverance, not giving up when things get hard. You've shown all those qualities. You earned this." Kevin took the coin carefully, emotion shining in his eyes. "Thank you." They sat in comfortable silence, father and son, in their own home, with their own future stretching ahead. The documentary about their journey premiered the following month at a film festival. Stewart and Kevin attended reluctantly, uncomfortable with the attention, but recognizing the filmmaker had treated their story respectfully. The theater was packed. As the lights dimmed and the film began, Stewart watched his own life play out on screen. The storage auction, the truck they'd lived in, the discovery of the drones, the legal battles, the congressional testimony. The filmmaker had woven together interviews, news footage, and intimate moments into a narrative about resilience and second chances. When it ended, the audience stood in applause. Stewart felt Kevin squeeze his hand. During the Q&A session afterward, someone asked what Stewart had learned from the experience. He thought carefully before answering, that your worth isn't measured by your circumstances. That family, whether blood or chosen, matters more than anything. That sometimes you have to risk everything on one last chance. And that kindness from strangers when you're at your lowest can literally save your life. The documentary found distribution on a streaming platform. Stewart's story reached millions, generating conversations about homelessness, veteran services, medical debt, and the systems that fail ordinary people. Stewart used his platform carefully, speaking at veteran events and homeless services fundraisers, always emphasizing that he'd been lucky to have Kevin, lucky to find the drones, lucky to have people like Pierce and Francine and Leo who helped when it mattered most. "Most people in my situation don't get that lucky," he'd say. "We need to build systems that don't depend on luck." 6 months after closing the Vanguard deal, Stewart's consulting work had become fulfilling in ways he hadn't expected. His team was developing drone technology for wilderness search and rescue, using the innovations from Raymond's prototypes to save lives. Stuart's military experience and engineering knowledge proved invaluable, and his co-workers respected him not despite his past, but because of it. Kevin thrived in his liaison role, his natural people skills making him perfect for coordinating between technical teams and management. He'd enrolled part-time in a 4-year university program, finishing the degree he'd abandoned. One evening, Kevin announced he'd been accepted into a prestigious business program with a full scholarship. It means I'd need to move closer to campus, get my own place. Stuart felt both pride and a pang of loss. That's wonderful, Kev. You should go. You'll be okay here alone. Stuart looked around the house they'd renovated together. Fresh paint, repaired fixtures, Stuart's workshop in the garage. I'll be fine. It's time for you to build your own life. The workshop behind the house became Stuart's sanctuary. On weekends, he worked there, building furniture, repairing small engines, tinkering with electronics. The smell of sawdust and oil reminded him of better times before everything fell apart, but also of the journey that had brought him here. Uncle Raymond's framed letter hung on the workshop wall, alongside a photo of Sarah holding infant Kevin. Stuart talked to them sometimes while he worked, updating them on Kevin's progress, on the drone technology saving lives, on the simple contentment of having a home and purpose. Kevin visited often, even after moving to his university apartment. Sunday dinners became tradition, Stuart cooking, Kevin bringing stories about classes and internship opportunities and the future he was building. "I've been thinking about Mom a lot lately," Kevin said one Sunday evening, helping wash dishes. "Wondering what she'd think about everything that's happened. She'd be proud of you, the man you've become, and proud of you too. You never gave up on me, even when giving up would have been easier." Stuart dried his hands on a towel, turning to face his son. "You made it easy to keep going. On the worst nights in that truck, knowing you were there kept me from falling apart completely. We saved each other." "Yeah, I think we did." The documentary won awards at several festivals and generated enough interest that a production company optioned the rights for a feature film adaptation. Stuart negotiated a modest payment and creative consultation rights, ensuring the story would be told authentically. More importantly, the documentary's impact led to policy changes. Congressional committees used Stuart's testimony as catalyst for increased veteran housing support and medical debt relief programs. It wasn't everything needed, but it was progress. Stuart received letters from veterans across the country, people who'd seen the documentary, who recognized their own struggles in his story, who found hope in his eventual success. He tried to respond to each one personally, offering encouragement and resources. One letter came from a man living in his car in Arizona with his teenage daughter. Stuart called him directly, talked for an hour, connected him with local services, and sent money to help bridge immediate needs. It wouldn't solve everything, but it might be the difference between giving up and trying one more day. A year after the storage auction, Stuart stood in that same facility parking lot. Bridget had invited him to speak at a fundraiser for her non-profit, providing free storage units to homeless families trying to preserve their belongings while getting back on their feet. "You inspired this," Bridget told him. "Watching what you went through, seeing how close you came to losing everything, including your memories, I realized storage facilities could be part of the solution instead of part of the problem." Stuart looked at Unit 47. Now rented to someone else, holding someone else's possessions and dreams. Sometimes losing everything teaches you what really matters. The fundraiser raised over $50,000. Stuart contributed $20,000 personally, understanding better than most what the service would mean to families in crisis. Kevin graduated with honors 18 months after starting his university program. Stuart sat in the audience watching his son walk across the stage to receive his diploma, and felt his chest swell with pride so intense it was almost painful. Afterward, Kevin introduced Stuart to his professors, his friends, his girlfriend, a smart, kind young woman studying social work. They talked about the future with the casual confidence of people who believed good things were possible, and Stuart remembered when he'd felt that way too, before life had taught him harder lessons. But maybe, Stuart thought, Kevin could keep that optimism. Maybe the struggle had been Stuart's to bear, so his son could build something better. At Kevin's graduation party, held in Stuart's backyard, Francine brought food from the diner. Leo gave Kevin a vintage watch that had come through the pawn shop. Pierce attended with his wife, congratulating Kevin and reminding Stuart that the consulting contract had options for renewal. "Vanguard is pleased with your work," Pierce said. "They want to extend for another 5 years." "I'll think about it," Stuart replied, though he already knew he'd accept. The work was meaningful, and he'd found satisfaction in contributing to something larger than himself. As the party wound down and guests departed, Stuart found himself alone in his workshop, holding the Navy Challenge coin Kevin had returned to him at graduation. "Your turn's done," Kevin had said. "You carried this through everything. Now it's time to rest." But Stuart didn't feel done. He felt like he was finally beginning. Not the life he'd planned decades ago, but something unexpected and valuable nonetheless. His phone buzzed with a text from Kevin. "Thanks for everything, Dad. Love you." Stuart smiled, typing back, "Love you too. Proud of you, always." He turned off the workshop light and walked toward the house. Warm light glowed from the windows. Inside was safety, comfort, home. Things he'd lost and fought to reclaim. Things he'd never take for granted again. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of Francine's roses from the garden she'd helped him plant. Somewhere in the neighborhood a dog barked. A car passed on the street. Normal sounds of normal life, the kind Stuart had once thought he'd never experience again. He paused at the back door, looking up at the stars, thinking about Sarah and Raymond, about the improbable chain of events that had led from a $110 gamble to this moment of peace. "Thank you," he whispered to whatever forces had guided him here. Luck, fate, family, or simple stubborn persistence. Then Stuart Landry walked inside his home, closed the door behind him, and allowed himself to believe, finally, that everything was going to be okay.